Another tough show, guys. Just 3 weeks after Charlie Kirk was assassinated right here next to my home in Utah, we have news that a deranged killer went into an LDS church in Michigan and took 4 people's lives. As we'll talk about, I don't think those 2 incidents are fully disconnected. I think that there's some connections there. Before I give my full reaction to it and talk about what I think this means for America, let me fully outline for you what we know so far about what happened, as well as what we know about the shooter, because we have some breaking news on that. Basically, what you had was a middle-aged man who rammed his truck, which was filled with explosives, into the chapel part of the church. You can see the picture right here. For those of you unfamiliar, all of the churches in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are essentially the same. They're just carbon copies. And so that specific part of the church that you're seeing right there is the chapel. And there were people worshiping in the chapel. They were all gathered there together. And so that's where most people were. You can see that car. He then got out of his car and started shooting people. This is according to Fox News. They said 2 responding officers confronted Sanford. Sanford is the last man. I'm not going to say his first name, but he's the last name of the man who did it. Exchanged gunfire with him, killing him, the chief said. Sanford was armed with what appeared to be a rifle. Authorities initially reported that 1 person had been killed. Hours later, police said a second victim died at a hospital. Later Sunday evening, police said 2 additional bodies had been recovered from the burned out church. Authorities said the search for additional victims was still ongoing. Here is a video of the building on fire. So for those of you just listening, what you can see is a massive fire. I mean, the whole thing lit up. Smoke everywhere. The whole church is gone. I mean, I don't know what kind of explosives were in it. The whole thing went up in flames. It is unrecoverable. It is unclear at this point if the 4 people who died were from bullets or from the fire. I'd have to imagine it's likely bullets because it seemed like most people were able to get out of the church on time. It seems like the fire went up quickly, but not too quickly for people to get out, since it came, I think, just from that one area where the truck explosives went off. It also should be noted, because I haven't heard anyone say it yet, but those officers responded incredibly fast. For only a few people, there were more people who were injured from bullet wounds, but for only a few people to die, and for those people to step in and take out the killer was fantastic. I mean, those are heroes. I haven't heard anyone say that. It's fantastic. They successfully ended the threat, saved everyone there, kept themselves safe. You could not ask for more. So great. They deserve all the credit in the world. Either the chief police, I'm not sure which one it was, in Grand Blanc, Michigan, where this happened, or their PIO reported on the shooting. Here's what they said.
A couple additional bodies that we've discovered in the church. So that makes our total victim count up to 4 victims. As I said before, there has already been the suspect who is deceased as well. So we have 5 deceased persons from this tragic incident. Again, our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims of this incident.
Okay, so that's what happened. Now, what everybody has on their minds, what they're asking is, why did this guy in Grand Blanc, Michigan, go shoot this LDS church? And this is where things get a little bit confusing. There are reported pictures of him wearing a Trump 2020 shirt. You can see it right here. We also have donations and histories from him donating to left-wing groups. So his politics are not very clear right now. No one really knows. There's a lot of accusations going out. I think they're unfruitful. Here is what the FBI said about their investigation.
I can confirm at this time that the FBI is now leading the investigation and is investigating this as an act of targeted violence. FBI crisis response teams, such as our evidence response teams, SWAT, Special Agent Bomb Technicians, victim specialists, were deployed to the scene.
So here's where I think everybody has it wrong. When it comes to shootings, what everyone asks is, was he left-wing or was he right-wing? That's what people want to know, and I don't think that question is relevant here. Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary, was on Fox News and said that she has intel that this was not political, it was religiously motivated. Take a look.
And based on my conversations with the FBI director, all they know right now is this was an individual who hated people of the Mormon faith. And they are trying to understand more about this, how premeditated it was, how much planning went into it, whether he left a note. All of those questions have yet to be answered, but certainly will be answered.
All right, so this is where it comes down to some harsh truths. And I will fully admit right now I'm hugely biased. I'm very emotional towards this because I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But we have a huge anti-Mormon problem in this country. And here is the deal, guys. We can disagree on doctrine. I don't care at all. I don't care if you say I'm not Christian. The only person that I care who knows that I'm a Christian is Jesus Christ. I don't care about the trolls on the internet who say Mormons aren't Christian. I don't care about the pastors who hold anti-Mormon nights at their churches. It does not affect my salvation at all. I don't care. I get it. We believe differently. That's fine. I could not care less. But when it bleeds into violence and fear-mongering, that's when it crosses the line. I mentioned earlier that this has ties into Charlie Kirk's assassination, I believe. The person who shot Charlie Kirk was an ex-Mormon. His family used to be Mormon. He was a Mormon growing up as a kid. He left the church a long time ago, obviously, because he had a trans boyfriend or whatever. Obviously, transgender, Mormon don't tend to go together, right? Following the death, though, the internet was ablaze with anti-Mormon rhetoric, talking about how evil Mormons were. There were pastors doing this because the shooter was somehow connected to the church, even though he wasn't. And the rhetoric, I think, has consequences. It always does. We do this with the left all the time. We say the left wing cannot keep calling people Nazis on the right and not expect people to do about it. The same is true, and it's not political, but it's religiously motivated for Mormons and Christians or Islam or anything like that. And although we don't know exactly the motivations of the shooter yet, I would not be surprised if he is conservative. I don't care. I don't think it matters. I think he was motivated to do this based on his anti-Mormon feelings and the rhetoric online right now. And I think a lot of that is coming from the Charlie Kirk assassination. And the thing is, for those of you who don't know, this is not new. For those of you who aren't familiar with Mormon history, this attack on the church would have been legal in Missouri in 1978. In 1838, the Missouri governor signed an executive order making it legal to genocide Mormons in Missouri. A lot of people don't know this about our nation's history. It was legal longer for you to genocide Mormons than it was black people in this country. Since Mormons wanted Missouri to not be a slave state, they wielded too much political power. They were genocided. They were pushed from the state. That was not repealed until 47 years ago. I personally have ancestors who were murdered in Missouri over this. So murdering Mormons, nothing new at all. In fact, just this weekend, BYU, which is my alma mater and the school sponsored by the church, played their football game at Colorado. And the Colorado student section started chanting F the Mormons, which happens. It's happened at Oregon. It's happened at Arizona. It happens all the time for BYU. Take a look. And so you have to ask yourself, for who else would this be allowed? If the chant was F the Jews or F the Islams or F the Catholics, Colorado would be instantly fined by the Big 12, which is the conference that they're in, and it would be all over social media. It would be a huge thing, but the anti-Mormon sentiment somehow is as accepted as it gets. Michael Knowles actually tweeted about the game. I think that it summed up pretty well what a lot of people are feeling right now. This is what he said. He said, I'm sure the kids didn't mean much by it in light of the game, but also, given all the LDS hate, even before today's awful attack, again, that chant was 12 hours before the shooting happened. Anyway, he continued, the university should issue a statement. Mormons are one of the few religious groups that can be constantly derided with seeming total social approval. And he's absolutely right. Following the shooting, President Trump released a statement. Here is what he said. He came out and said, I've been briefed on the horrendous shooting that took place at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan. The FBI was immediately on scene. We'll be leading the federal investigation and providing full support to the state and local officials. The suspect is dead, but there is still a lot to learn. This appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians in the United States of America. The Trump administration will keep the public, and I think he's right. Let me pause there for a second. Again, he actually didn't make this political. For as supposedly polarizing as Donald Trump is supposed to be, that we hear from the left, he never said that this was a leftist. He correctly said this is a targeted attack on Christians. I don't know if it's coming from another Christian denomination. I don't know if it's because of Muslim sentiment in our country, but he correctly says it is anti-Christian. He then continues, says, in the meantime, pray for the victims and their families. This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately. Again, notice he called my church Christian because he typed the word Christian. This caused many people all over X, all over social media, to correct Trump and say that we're not. That's what they felt like they had to say. Again, I don't care what people think, but it is astounding to me that people were more outraged that President Trump called us Christians than the fact that we were murdered. And those are coming from people who are also saying they're Christians. So for my Protestant friends listening, because there's a lot of you, and there's a lot of Catholic people who watch the show as well, and I appreciate you. If your pastor tweeted that kind of thing out instead of their prayers for fellow believers, may I suggest you leave and get the frick out of that church. If you've got a pastor that has anti-Mormon nights where they talk about Joseph Smith for 2 hours instead of Jesus Christ, might I suggest you go find a new church? Because why? I think back to the Bible. At one point, late in his ministry, Christ has his disciples come to him and they say, look, that guy over there is preaching in your name. We don't know who he is. And he's casting out devils and he's healing people. What should we do? Should we go rebuke him? And Christ says, no, leave him be. Christ isn't saying, oh yeah, he's part of our church. Christ is just saying, if he's doing a good work, good fruits will follow. If he's with the devil, bad fruits will follow. I understand full well that Protestants and Catholics don't believe that the Mormon church is true. That's fine with me. That's fine. We can all agree to disagree. But to not do what Christ said, which is leave them be. If it's good, good fruits will follow. And to instead come out and do these anti-Mormon nights, unacceptable, unbiblical, unchristian. If you've got a pastor that calls churches they don't like cults, maybe you should go get a new church. That's my suggestion, because it's that kind of rhetoric that I think led to the shooting. I don't think it was left versus right. I think it was evil versus a church. And this is the real problem. Pew Research did a survey on how Christian churches feel about other denominations. It's shocking. Take a look. This is what you can see. On the left, again, this is ratings given by on the left hand. On the top is the people. If you look at Mormon, it's in the middle. You can see that Mormons love everybody. They do. They especially love mainline Protestants and evangelical Christians, as well as Catholics. Like plus 43, plus 51, plus 53. The highest. No one loves other Christians more than Mormons. If you just look at the data, they even love atheists. Less so, but still. And they love Muslims and they love Jews. They just love people. We love people because that's what Christ told us to do. Now, if you look at the top column, again, Mormon is in the middle, you see that the only group that favorably looks at the church is Catholics. That's the only one, and that's plus 2. It's not very high. Born again evangelicals, not a fan. And if you look, evangelical and Mormons hated more than anyone. In fact, hated more than atheists. I'm not saying atheists should be hated, but when you've got Christians that like atheists more than other Christians, you got major, major problems. And Pew sums it up at the top. This was the main finding they got, which is Latter-day Saints feel positively toward other Christian groups in the U.S., but the reverse is not true. And that's really sad, I think. And I think it shows what happened in Michigan. To top all of this off, the leader of the church, who we regard to be a prophet, essentially the Pope of our church, Russell M. Nelson, died just a few hours before the shooting. Literally as those Colorado fans were shouting, F the Mormons, he died. Here's a picture of him. A lot of people will recognize him because he's been a pretty famous figure in the last 101 years that he's been alive. Donald Trump put out a statement about him, summed up his life perfectly, and I think ties everything together that we've been talking about today. He said, Russell M. Nelson, the president and prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, passed away last night at the age of 101. He just had his birthday earlier this week. Russell was sharp, engaged in service up until the end. Our hearts and prayers are with his incredible wife, Wendy, and this is the important part to me, his 10 children, 57 grandchildren, and more than 167 great-grandchildren, as well as members of the church all over the country. Russell had a remarkable life, pioneering life-saving heart surgery techniques, and of course, his ministry of many decades. He was a physician, literally and spiritually, and will be greatly missed. A beautiful, beautiful tweet by President Trump. On the show, we talk about conservatism every day, what it means, why it can beat the left, and the best thing that Russell M. Nelson did was his posterity. 167 great-grandchildren. Wow. That is what a legacy to have. 101 years old. He was born in 1924, and he lived to see more than 167 members of his posterity. Over 200 members of his posterity. The left, or the evil more generally in the world, cannot compete with that. This shooter in Michigan cannot, because while that evil shooter who hated my church took the life of 4 of our members, and I'm very sad for them, the leader of the church, and many more like him, he's just one example, went out into the world and went out of the world, adding more than 200 more of us. That shooter and the evil can't do anything. I love interacting with you guys. That's why I've created my new Substack. Substack is a weekly newsletter that comes right to your email. It's completely free to you. I'm able to talk about things that I just can't talk about on YouTube because big tech doesn't like it, but I'm able to talk about it there. Or I also talk about things I wasn't able to get to in the show. Go check it out right now. Again, completely free to you. The link is in the description below. So with all the anti-Mormon sentiment right now and the horrible incidents in Michigan, I wanted to share some really, really fantastic news, something that Mormons and evangelical Christians are working on together, and it's fantastic. This is going to the Supreme Court right now. This is what it says. Brief of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, National Associations of Evangelicals, Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, Coalition for Jewish Values, and Jewish Coalition for Religious Liberty, supporting petitioners. So those are the groups involved in what is going to the Supreme Court. They are filing to not allow transgender people to be brought under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment in an effort to save religious freedom. And that's fantastic. Their argument is really good. The Equal Protection Clause, essentially what it argues, and essentially what it does, is that it argues that everyone is equal for everything under the law. And that was part of the 14th Amendment. And that sounds really good, and you think that's a really great thing, until you realize that that could easily infringe on religious rights. So for example, if a church only has male pastors, because that's biblical, before everyone got crazy and there's now these woke Christian churches. But if the church, let's say a Baptist church or even an LDS church, we have bishops in our church. We believe that only men can hold the priesthood, can be bishops. Maybe your church believes only men can be pastors. The 14th Amendment would force churches to allow female pastors, which is, again, against biblical teaching. So you are taking freedom of religion away from us, from churches. Here is what they write. And I think this is just one piece. It's a 24-page document, but I think this sums it up well, and I think their argument's fantastic. They say, we agree, but right to underscore a different concern, elevating transgender status under the 14th Amendment will shatter the framework of rights and protections reflecting this nation's fundamental commitment to religious freedom. Constitutional guarantees of the free exercise of religion and equal protection are both subject to judicial balancing tests. A novel equality right would compel courts to steer between liberty and equality without compass or star at the expense of rights embodied in the written Constitution. And because constitutional rights prevail over statutes, elevating transgender status would weaken the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and create uncertainty for religious organizations in employment, public accommodations, public funding, and parental rights. So they're underscoring right there. If someone, a transgender, say it's a woman, says they're a man, that creates uncertainty for, say, a church who's trying to employ a pastor, because now they could be sued because they say, oh, we don't, they were born as a female. That's not okay with us. Now that female can go and sue them. They finish by saying this: making transgender status a quasi-suspect class will expose religious people and institutions to fines, damages, suits, and the loss of public benefits, all for exercising their religion, which is what I just described. Essentially, they're saying they don't want to be sued for refusing to ordain a transgender male. What if a female transitions to male, says they want to be ordained? I know right now, I can say for my church, the current policy for the LDS church is to treat everyone as the gender that they were born with, their actual biology. That is for many things. We have ordinances in the church as well that only men receive or only women are a part of. And if you bring transgenderism into it, then we could be sued for not issuing that ordinance or that ceremony to their respective gender or what they think is their gender. What trans activist groups are trying to do is make it so that is illegal. But this is actually really good news. Again, I've read the 24-page document. The coalition of these Christian and Jewish groups is great. Their argument's fantastically articulated. I'm very confident that the Supreme Court will rule in their favor. And the reason why I point this story out today is because it shows what churches can do when they stick together. There are so many Protestant voices out there trying to fight Mormons right now. And frankly, there are some Mormon voices that are quite critical of Protestant churches. Again, we can disagree on doctrine all day long. No problem with that. But there's no reason to fight each other on an institutional level or on a political level. They're trying to tell Mormons they don't believe in Christ. Their time would be much better spent doing things like this, for example. Actually fighting evil, actually fighting for Christ instead of fighting each other. Stop supporting streaming services that hate your guts and start supporting conservative ones. We the Free is a partner of the show. The show is on We the Free. They're a conservative streaming network, has TV shows, movies, Second Amendment content, and political commentary like mine. Go check it out right now. The link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching today's episode, guys. Please like the video so other great patriots like yourselves will see it. And you can tune in every single weekday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show, or you can watch another video right here.